The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey.
Are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to Bitcoin!
That's a nickname in its own way, but we came up with a new couple of words for corn.
Bitcoin stands for freedom, sovereignty, and independence from government, coercion, and control.
Can you quickly tell everybody what a rug pull is?
Yo, Shadalay to all the wonderful frogs out there. G-Money coming at you. The July episode from Cyberpunk Summer. Hope you guys are all having a great summer. Got back from GART a couple weeks ago. It was absolutely incredible. I think we have another one coming up in September in Vegas. So maybe come out, hang out with the frogs in Vegas. We're still here. We're still triggering the Q-tards, the Mogadonians, the gold doomers, the gold bugs, the shit coiners. But we're still here. And this summer, this last couple of months have been absolutely brutal from a morale perspective, from a price perspective. Like, talk about getting rid of all the tourists. Bitcoin has done just that. Most of them anyway. And so if you're triggered, if you're tired, if you're angry, I get it, man. But that's the whole point of this thing, is that, it punishes the tourists. And so don't be here for just, the number go up. Be here for the real revolution, right? This is the revolution. This is the digital revolution. This is where sovereignty reigns. And so, there's a little bit of pain associated with it. And so we'll just continue marching on until the rest of the world figures out and until the number goes back up. But yeah, less than a month to go with this very ridiculous soft fork from the pedophile who eats cats and dogs and baby bunnies, Luke Dasher. So, and guys, this is a much, much more sinister attack than you might actually realize. Oh, it's just about money and removing JPEGs. Like, no, this is deep, man. And I'll just talk about it real quick because what happens here is, and I quoted it, but BIP 110 is more sinister than people realize. It's literally gutting the very high consensus bar with a pathetic 55% participation trophy, lowering the threshold so that emotional mob can finally vote on Bitcoin's rules, like every other captured shitcoin democracy. And so that's what this is. Like, the reason Bitcoin is important, the reason Bitcoin is so special and unique, is that you can't just have a simple 55% majority overrule the rules. Like, that's the whole point. You need a high level of consensus to make any rule changes. Full stop. And that's how previous forks have worked. That's how previous upgrades have worked. That's how previous upgrades to the Bitcoin protocol. That's why it's so special. If this was just some easily like mob rule, simple shitcoin, I wouldn't be here. Like, that's what makes us unique. And so this attack is so sinister They want you to take it back to voting. They want the woke mob to change Bitcoin, the rules of it, by just voting for it, right? Voting. You've heard vote hard before. And so, it's unfortunate that so many people have fallen for the PSYOP. But again, consensus in a new world means you cannot change the rules for everybody else with just 55%. You need the whole kit and caboodle for everybody to agree. And what that means is that, the system from the start was pretty much made essentially perfect, okay? And that you're never really going to get 90% of people to agree on things. Or if you do, it's going to be things that are only in the best interest of everybody involved. And so really, truly think about that. And this goes beyond, what Bitcoin is as money, but this is a direct attack on the essential beauty of this system, which is the high level of consensus it takes to change any of the rules of said system. So anyways, got an interesting interview today with, of course, Mr. Jeff Booth. If you don't follow Jeff Booth, go follow him on X. He's Jeff Booth. Go check out his book, The Price of Tomorrow. And we'll get into some commercials. And also, got to get some gear. We have hats back in stock. If you guys want the 17 hat in black or orange, go to 1776.love, go to the gear section, and pick up some Pepe gear. Give us some love. Send us a shade of lay or a like down below. And of course, share it with your friends and family. But we'll get into the commercials and then we'll get into Jeff Booth. All right. Shade of
one hero, one mission to deliver softness to America.
No, Chi-Chi, we can't stop for snacks, dude. We have to deliver all of these soft disclosure gift cards.
He goes by Zach Kane.
The motion detector.
Hey, stop fighting over the beer brush.
Life finds a way.
Hydrate your elbows, moisturize your soul. Feel the rhythm together. Makes you feel alive and let the lotion roll. Soft disclosure, hear the cry. Maximum softness, do or die.
Muffin, hit it.
My Pillow's second annual mega sale is finally here. Get our patented premium My Pillows that adjust to your exact individual needs to give you the best sleep of your life.
When I got My Pillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
Now for the lowest price ever. Kings, $19.98. Queens, only $18.98. And Giza Dream bed sheets, the best sheets in history, for as low as $29.98. Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, towels that actually dry you. What a concept! Now only $39.98. And our made in the USA mattresses and mattress toppers as low as $99.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But that's not all. Order right now and we'll ship your order absolutely free.
Kept $1,600 from you in 2025. You probably didn't notice. Now multiply that by millions of Americans. That's over $433 billion in interest the banks kept. Your money goes in. Banks put it to work. They make record profits. You get almost nothing in return. And when they blow up, guess who has to bail them out? So what are you supposed to do? Ask politely? Wait? Accept that this is just how banking works? Or you could put your money where it works for you. On River, your cash earns 3.3%, paid in Bitcoin. Earning Bitcoin gives your money even more room to grow. And it's just as easy as how you bank today. You can get paid, pay your bills, and access your money anytime. Start banking with Bitcoin on River.
Badlandsmedia.tv/river. You will not regret it.
All right, we are back. The man, the myth, the legend, Jeff Booth is back on Rugpull Radio. Jeff, we are so excited to have you back, man. How have you been?
Really great. Great to see you.
Awesome. So, I just kind of want to get right into it because, as you know or may know, like I'm part of a very conservative MAGA group that's got its roots in voting and elections and Trump. And I'm trying to talk about this new world of abundance and deflation. And I keep getting, like, the biggest pushback I'm getting is that's just a utopian, communistic socialism dream with just like Bitcoin branding. And so that's like my biggest, I think, pushback on a lot of this stuff. And I was just curious, you might get that too. How do you frame it or talk to people that look at it from that lens?
So I feel it's so wild that people do that, right? Because it couldn't be anything like communism. It couldn't be anything like utopia. It's the free market. So I always start with, what does the free market ensure, right? Not maybe. What has to be the free market? Things that once existed get competed with new entrepreneurs creating new ideas. We only use the things that give us more value. Is that true?
Yes, right.
Because if an entrepreneur creates less value, the entrepreneur goes broke. Right? We don't be, why does he go broke? He or she go broke because we don't use the thing because it created less value.
Right.
So that means the free market has to be deflation, not might be, has to be, because we choose productivity. The productivity reduces prices and we're part of the choice. That fair?
Yeah, look, I'm on your side on this. I'm trying to talk to other folks.
But again, that's why I want to do this in a way that your audience can understand what they're saying is a complete hypocrisy against the free market.
Right. And it's just because I think they're stuck in this old world of, like, they think they live in capitalism now. I think it's part of that.
But that's why you have to break it apart, because it has nothing to do with Bitcoin, has nothing to do with this. Their mind about capitalism or communism and everything else has been distorted from a market that is not the free market and has never been the free market. And they believe in one side or the other side, and they're puppets on a string, regurgitating facts that aren't actual facts. They've never lived in the free market. And so they're taking a side and they're being coordinated against the other side, who is equally ignorant about what a free market looks like. And it's why it's so important. They've never lived in a free market. They don't have any pattern recognition for what it would look like. So instead of actually going to a first principle and saying what it would look like, they go, that's just utopia. I want to live where I live and believe in the people who tell me what that my version of the free market is free. Well, the entire system rests on money that's insolvent, that has to be debased, has to steal from them to be able to continue. The entire thing, the entire structure of that thing. So it's easy, instead of dealing with something that's like, it's really hard to let go of a lie, especially a lie that you've held your entire life. My version of the truth is better than the other person's version of the truth. They're both lies. The free market has never existed. It's not utopia. But it produces far better outcomes because nobody can control it. You're free. You have freedom to choose. And will we always have more problems? Yes, but they'll be solved by entrepreneurs because of the problem. The problem creates the margin opportunity to solve from an entrepreneur in a free market. And once you have 8 billion people solving problems, prices fall faster. Still more problems that we solve faster and faster. The only other way to do it is Those other people decide, and we're pawns in the system.
Okay, so if we extrapolate that, right, and I'm very in line with your thesis, right, and it extrapolates to governments, okay, because, you know, we get the thing, well, how will people self-associate? Who's going to control the quality of the water? Who's going to build the roads, right? All these are the things that come down to it. And so how do you envision governmental structures? Because right now, that's an extraction point from us, right? They extract value consistently. And so in this new free world, it forces them to compete. Like, how do you see these new governmental, because people have to organize in certain ways, certain jurisdictions. What does that look like to you in that future?
So this is why these are so hard to, so you have to start at, is what I said true, right? And it is for sure true. The free market produces deflation or productivity growth. Productivity growth is deflation, right? So first you have to say, is that true? Now, if you've never lived in it, and you're measuring government from the other system, then government would get bigger and bigger and bigger because it was a centralizing structure. If you're just, government would be one aspect of something that was manipulated money, those other people needed to control. And if you watch that other structure, you would see government getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You say, I'm going to remove it with Doge, Doge gets bigger, right? Nothing changes. It's just a pattern of more and more manipulation, more and more centralization, and more of your individual rights being taken by government. So now once you're in that system, trying to measure the other system that is so big, is so outrageous and everything else, you're wanting to make this new system how does it work today? It can't. It destroys that. Government has to get smaller in the free market. And how does it tries to fight the free market. It tries to bring Clarity Act into it. It tries to capture Bitcoin. It tries to do all of these things. Don't use Bitcoin, use a stable coin, it has to attack the Bitcoin. It has to try to make the Bitcoin less decentralized and secure, because otherwise the entire economic weight and all of the control and everything else moves to people rather than government. So what you're seeing across all attacks right now, and most people measuring Bitcoin from the system attacking Bitcoin, is that same conversation, right? They're inside a system that cannot resolve the problem, and they're worried about, and they're giving all of their strength, energy. They're using the dollar system that steals their own energy, right? And they think it's somebody else. So government in the free market has to look like when the U.S. was founded. It has to look like in service of the people. It has to get way smaller. The Constitution embedded hard money, and then it got captured by central banks over time, and slowly, and then now quickly, is on the other system. It has to respect the laws of the individual, and government gets way smaller in that. Does it happen right away? No. Each different region competes. Florida will lower taxes. People will move to Florida. Other states will do the same thing, and over and over. And money and capital will go, and whether it's a country or a state, like states within a country or a different country, labor and capital move to where it's treated best. And so if people are against Bitcoin, then labor and capital will move from those countries to countries that are for Bitcoin and for individual rights and freedoms. And this is going to play out for a long time, because most people are still caught in the system. They believe in the fairy tale that they live in a capitalist system or a socialist system, and the whole underpinning of that entire thing is centralizing faster and faster and faster. Why? It makes perfect sense. Like, everybody's talking about debt without a realization that the $300 trillion of debt today is completely insolvent. So that means every single asset on top of the 300 trillion is also a zero in a system that failed spectacularly. And the only reason that $300 trillion is solvent is because you know perfectly well that the US is going to debase your currency. They're going to steal from you. And you're making decisions inside that currency every time you use it to continue the charade. And all of the things you're accumulating on top of the charade are under government control too. Because what will happen if your house, you think it's safe? You think your real estate's safe in a system that goes like this? It'll be taxed back from you or taken back by force, or in either a socialist or a type of revolution that comes for it. Your assets inside that system that is contingent on stealing money from other people are unsafe. But people think they're safe. People think they're safe because they have been safe until now. Look what happens when countries break.
Yeah. Well, and as you keep talking about this, right, it keeps leading me to, our thesis or my thesis of digital 1776. And, you talk a lot about agency and how to take your agency actually back. And so, in this old system that we currently live in, our belief system, right, is what gives government their power to begin with, right? Like our consent, right, of government is what gives them the power to govern us. And so here we have this asset that is untaxable, immutable, permissionless, unconfiscatable. Why should Bitcoiners pay their taxes if they live in a system that is built on extraction? Because you brought it up right here about your real estate. I could assume we're seeing countries tax unrealized gains in crypto, and they're just going to continually do that until we actually take that power back and refuse to comply through unnatural man-made laws, in that sense.
Yeah. So first off, conflating crypto and Bitcoin are two, it would be the attack. Trying to get you to believe that blockchain and crypto matter when the only thing that's decentralized and secure is Bitcoin. But if you could get a whole bunch of people to think those are interchangeable, then they would be, and then you could do a whole bunch of tokenization on top of that, then you would keep them in your system. If you could get them to believe that a stable coin was the same as Bitcoin, they would transact in essentially this system with a travel rule that everything was censored. Everything was going into digital surveillance. And most Bitcoiners are still in that system. Take out Bitcoiners, everybody is in that system. So think about the magnitude of what this would feel like to actually be in a different system, to be building in a different system that is freedom, that is where the vast majority of people, even that you've considered friends in Bitcoin, were still in the other system and giving it more and more strength. That's how early we are. And that's why I say, if you go to first principles, if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, it doesn't care about my belief system. It's repricing the world, and more economic energy is moving into it from people who want freedom.
But in that perspective, like, an individual still has to take their agency. Like they cannot continue to contribute to a system that is stealing from them through just paper and belief systems.
So that's what I mean. So if you're measuring still, and so insert any idea from something that matches your belief system, prices go up. It would really, so you haven't asked, why do prices go up? Even when you say the natural state of the free market is deflation, prices should fall. You haven't gone deep enough to understand why prices go up, and they only go up in a system that's debasing its currency. And so that means if you are inside that system, there's nobody else to blame but you.
Yeah.
Right. That's an unfortunate part, right? The unfortunate part is you want to, your idea matters. It's those Democrats, it's those other people, it's you, because you're transacting in the system that's stealing from you, and you're telling yourself it's somebody else. And the more assets you're accumulating in the others, that system, you're also trying to protect those assets, right? in that thing. So you're not making rational choices on. You might be making rational choices because you believe that systems can be stable forever. It's not, right? So they're irrational choices, but it's you. And when I say agency, you want to. If you just had two choices, right? You have a belief system, prices always go up. You don't know why they go up, but they've always gone up in your time. Your parents bought a house, white picket fence, it's gone up in value. You haven't checked on why. It's just because of debasement of currency. You want to buy a house too, and that's the illusion of the free market that you live in. If somebody says it's those other people taking this from you, and our side's going to protect you, versus me saying something totally that doesn't match your pattern recognition, prices fall in a free market, right? That you need to understand Bitcoin at its core so you can take agency into it, you can take self-custody, and then add your nodes to protect it, and then transact in something that cannot be taken from you, so that it can't be taken from the people you're transacting into, and then building privacy on top of it, so that all of the people you know were protected as well. The version of reality I just gave you versus the version of reality this side of the political equation is going to protect me. The version of reality I just gave you, the agency version, is so much harder to believe. It's so much easier to believe somebody else will do it for you. And so that people people don't do the work.
By the way, that was the most eloquent way to stop paying your taxes, and I love it because you have to like build these. I got to give you props on that. Right? I
know, but it's not just taxes; it's everything.
Yeah, it's everything. 100%. It's everything.
It has to be everywhere, right?
Yeah,
it has to be everywhere. Why did cash exist in the first place? Cash exists so you could transact with somebody. You didn't have to trust them. Their product or service mattered to you. Right. Yeah. So now if you have digital cash that is completely monitored and your digital cash can be turned off in a second, you are not free anymore. You have to get out of that system, and you better get out fast.
Now, what about a transition though? Like, we've got these two systems, right? And we've got one that's been around for such a long time. And you know how hard it is to orange pill people, as the case may be. We're not going to get all these people over. And don't you see like kind of stable coins like move people over?
No, I do not.
Did I lose you there? Oh, I think
no.
Okay, sorry. It just seems like such a steep disruptionary period that stablecoins kind of help balance that transition a little bit better. Maybe that's my perspective.
So I don't think they can, and here's why. And again, first principles. Okay. So push back anywhere here that you don't agree with, and anyone that's listening too, come back, but really think through it from a first principle standpoint, and stay here. The natural state of the free market is deflation. What should happen with faster productivity growth, AI growth, productivity growth, was if you had exponential productivity growth, you'd expect exponential deflation. True? In the free market.
Correct. Yes, 100%. Because it's thermodynamically bound. It's all thermodynamics at that point.
Exactly. And so if you were not in that system, if you were in a system that was manipulating money, wouldn't that mean the manipulation of money would have to exponentially expand to keep it from failing through deflationary spiral?
So you're saying the stable coins are like that exponential deflation, money printing.
Money printing.
Okay.
So any derivative instrument of Bitcoin, where does the interest come from? Because there's no interest in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right. There's no. It's thermodynamically bounding. Right. A free market. Right. And prices fall in the free market. But if you were in this other system and you said most people's version of reality was prices rise all the time, and they believe that, then you could get them to trade their Bitcoin sell their Bitcoin, especially in a bear market, for something that was a yield instrument without asking where does the yield come from. So if you could pay them 12% or 10% or 8% inside this, it says the yield comes from stealing more money from them, from the base of a system that's already insolvent, that has to grow increasingly insolvent. So you're exploding money supply printing inside a system that most people think is safer, and they're leaving safety for an interest rate that they're going to get killed. But if you now have empathy for what they're doing, their food prices are going up, their gas prices are going up, all of the prices are going up because they're living inside that system. And if somebody offered them 12% interest on their money to take it out of Bitcoin to move back to this stable system, they'll take it because they're just trying to pay their bills. So Bitcoin in that time will go down because a whole bunch of people will be selling to centralize. But the systems are opposites. They cannot coexist together. And really, really hear that. They cannot coexist. One system wins or the other system wins. There is no free market without Bitcoin. There has never been a free market, global free market. There's been a local free market. When I say local, I mean from the United States under the Constitution was the first local free market. People moved to that free market from all over the world to take advantage of their individual ideas competing in a free market, which created the superpower that is the US today. And then it slowly got captured by broken money. So now you have a global free market operating on Bitcoin and a whole bunch of power and brokers and everything you listen to in the media trying to stop it. And you will likely take the money. Most Bitcoiners will likely take the money because they're not measuring in the free market. They're still measuring in the distorted market, and that's their entire life.
And so when you're talking about this system must attack the other system, you're saying the stable coins are actually an attack on Bitcoin in that sense.
Clarity Act, stable coins, travel rule, what's happening in Europe right now, all of these things are coordinated function to try to stop self-custody, to try to stop you from operating inside Bitcoin. You could even argue potentially, I don't want to get into it on this, core nuts, I just think what would the system do to infiltrate people inside one side of the debate to try to remove decentralization and security?
Yeah, this is opening. Yeah. No, keep going.
And so inside that, what it means is we have to, if we've always been co-opted before and we think it's somebody else, then we have to be really curious to what levels of co-option would happen. We have to be intellectually curious to what would happen because money is such a big thing, and we say, oh, we're going to take the money, and it has so much power and it's an influence over us that a tangent here. There's not very many people who don't realize that the Austrian economists were right. The founding principles of the U.S. were right on hard money. There's very few people who argue that. Then how did they get co-opted? They got co-opted because of broken money, and then laws changed to support the broken money, and what the fringe movement that was right, that was the founding principles of the U.S. and it found same principles in Austrian economics, looks like those crazies, right? Versus that's normal. That because the money is so powerful. So if the money is so powerful, and those other people constantly miss it, then you probably do too.
Yeah.
And you have to be really curious on what links, would a money control system do to infiltrate something that would remove its power and free individuals forever? And those links would be anything.
Well, this is interesting because I think we have two different views of how Bitcoin maybe was, the Genesis block and all this stuff, how it was, started from the beginning on, whether this technology was just some random guy in his basement that created it, or, with each piece of it being, nuclear proof USA military tech, that if Bitcoin was maybe some grander scheme by white hat military folks to help free mankind from our current situation. And so I think that's the kind of the binary dynamic I look at, is like, either it's just some random happenstance that just group of cryptographers came together and did this, or, and I don't think it's a 0% chance, by the way, either option.
Me neither.
What's that?
Me neither. I actually agree with that. But it almost doesn't matter, because it exists now in time that it's decentralized and secure now. And you can, when I say agency, you can prove everything I just said. You can understand this, and then you can decide, like even in BIP 110 knots, you can decide what your node and what you want the network to look like. And so if a whole bunch of us say, I want it to look like centralized coin, and something with back doors in it for something that you could shut down civilization, or you could shut down all dissent, then it'll look like that. If enough people say it will not look like that over my dead body, right, and they're distributed and decentralized, then all of the risk vectors of the centralization, right, would be constantly on attack. For when we say the consensus mechanism and what this looks like, in why it feels so, if you're outside of Bitcoin, even probably if you're inside, it's so divisive. And people say all those Bitcoiners, they don't know who Bitcoiners are, independent thinkers, and they think across the spectrum. And that's a good thing, because we've never been able to view the entire consensus of the world. We've been told what we should see. We've been this narrow frame of the reference on what we can see. So now when you have something outside of that frame of reference, it's bound to be chaotic. But the chaos is us learning what version of reality do we want.
Yeah, and so that's why I would ask you to maybe step aside your thesis and your views right now, maybe look at from a different view, and perhaps, if this is a bigger grand scheme of military intelligence that has put this together, that maybe the stablecoin thing is a transitionary period. Like maybe humanity had to be kind of forced upon this, because we have, a Treasury Secretary that's a Bitcoin maxi. We've got the Fed Chair, Kevin Warsh, is a Bitcoin max. Like Trump is surrounding himself with all these Bitcoin maxis. And perspective where America needs Bitcoin the least. We have the most powerful military. We have the dominant reserve currency. And so why is the president of our country pushing something that technically we don't even need? He says China's gonna buy it up, when China's banning Bitcoin and crypto, all over the place. And so it seems like what is happening is this free market is being imposed from a greater perspective than maybe we even realize.
Yeah, no, I don't. So push back on that, right?
Yeah.
What is a stable coin? It's a coin. It's a coin tethered to so it loses value at the same rate the U.S. dollar loses value. The U.S. dollar is less money,
but it gives full transparency of that asset instead of a fractional reserve banking structure that we have now. Correct.
So inside, I don't think it does. I just think you have, so that system has to still be inflationary, because you're still inside the system.
Right.
So then where does the inflation come from? It comes from
more dollars.
Printing
more dollars. More assets. Yeah.
So you're inside a system. And so printing more dollars, what does that lead to? It leads to more centralization and more control, bigger government. Right. Where does that lead to? Less and less individual rights and freedoms, and less free market. So there's nothing in that system, and just about every act that you've ever had, Patriot Act, right, Inflation Reduction Act, anything by government saying this is good for you, is typically the opposite. Clarity Act will be the same, right? For Bitcoin. And there's a bunch of Bitcoiners that want it to happen. They're cheering for it to be able to have price go up in Bitcoin rather than the free market. And the cost of that is more centralization from a system that will control your every move. So structurally, I'm not saying good or bad people. I'm saying it matches your idea of reality, of what your version of the good people are, in something that totally is unlike a free market. It cannot be the free market because the free market produces deflation.
Yeah, and so I look at it from a perspective of it's actually kind of revitalizing some of our banking institutions and stuff, because this new world of Bitcoin is so disruptive to the current structure that if we just went over to it, like there would be a lot of death, destruction, and chaos. And so if I look at the stablecoin thing, for instance, right, and more dollars, what I'm seeing is the world is now adopting more dollars. Okay, so what we're getting is hyper stablecoinization, which is really hyper dollarization.
Yeah.
And when you get that, like you get small, very tyrannical governments who can no longer tyrannize their people with their own currency. So we technically are tyrannizing them, but it's kind of like wrapping up there because people will flood to the dollar and then their local currencies will actually kind of collapse to the dollar. And so what happens in the end is that those tyrannies actually get kind of wound up through dollarization. And then at the end of that, well, let me just finish. Let me land the plane. And then at the end of that, the hyper stablecoinization, hyper dollarization leads to hyper Bitcoinization at the end, which eventually leads to hyper Americanization throughout the entire world. So that's kind of my way that I look at it. But please tell me where you think I'm wrong.
So that is one plausible path.
Okay.
But what is the outcome of that path? So you have exponential technology moving prices lower and lower and lower, productivity gains. So you have exponential money printing or debasing currencies. And what that does is a high US dollar around the world, right? As other people use the US dollar choose. That means US needs to have more debt. They're the funding mechanism of the world, exponential rise in debt, and has to have higher incomes. And everywhere else is producers, massively low income for the U.S. machine that's rising on debt. So all of the jobs constantly move offshore, and all of the infrastructure tech that is actually building the future increasingly moves offshore to China and other places where they have the arms race in AI, the arms race and other things. Look at robots in China compared to the US. US is way behind, right? And that's what's happening. You're forcing through lower labor rates, massively lower labor rates, because US is trying to extract those with a high dollar, extract minerals, resources, everything else. And so these currencies collapse. It looks in short term good for the US. It's terrible because you've hollowed out your intelligence. You've hollowed out because a market will chase the lower labor costs and then they'll move it to AI. And so you set up your own destruction by trying to extend this paradigm of U.S. superpower of the world. And the U.S. superpower of the world comes from money printing.
Right. I guess for me, I mean, all countries try to get access to dollars already as it is. You know, a lot of countries are just trying to get dollars because their local currencies fail. And the dollar is the only thing they can actually get because a lot of them don't get Bitcoin yet, right? Let's be honest. So their first reaction is to go to dollars.
And all of these things are far more likely than what I'm saying. I'm saying is people are going to get hurt like crazy because they're far more likely and they're making their actions inside the system that's feeding them the narrative that they want to believe, just like you just said, right? You're not going through the second order and third order consequence of the decision. You're going to the decision right now and thinking, how do I get Bitcoin to go up? And that still is a broken monetary system that has to have all these negative consequences. and down, because it's exactly the opposite of the free market. And while you do that, then the rules get tighter and tighter. If you could have everything transacting just like gold, right? If you had everything transacting not on gold, but on a derivative instrument of gold, then gold gets centralized. And then you change the rules of gold and nothing's changed, right? And so that's what that version would look like. But the centralization here is different and way worse, because you're inside the digital panopticon of a surveillance state inside that system, and you're trading your freedom for short-term money. And you're part of the system that's trading. And lots of people will do it, just like lots of countries will choose the US dollar because it's better. What they're really saying is what I'm saying right. What they're really saying, just like you just said, every dollar has lost value. US dollar has just lost less value, even though it's lost 99% of its value in the last 100 years. It's lost less value than the other shitty currencies.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of look at like Bukele, like the Bukele model of, look, they adopted the dollar first, then they adopted Bitcoin. And it seems like that could happen across the world, to where they adopt the dollar, which removes their Bitcoin. That's kind of what, it seems like the roadmap. But, we love all for different perspectives, because we got to figure out, we're trying to figure out how this is going to end up, because we all want a better world full of abundance, peace, and, prosperity for everybody. And so we're just trying to help as many people as we can, figure that out. So I want to talk about this next thing, the capital markets, because me and you have a very different opinion on this. And I want to kind of extrapolate this with you, because I'm sure you're aware of securities lending, right? You know how rigged our capital markets are. Yeah. Securities lending is where the rehypothecation of securities get lent 20 times over so they can do naked short selling. You know about the GameStop fiasco. And so we have broken capital markets. Okay. And so in your recent, Bitcoin Magazine interview, you talked about tokenization being part of the fiat scam, and that capital markets would actually get way smaller. Now, in your vision of like the price of tomorrow, like wrapping thermodynamics around the monetary layer is one way to get there. But what if we were able to wrap thermodynamics around the capital markets as well? Because what we have currently is an extraction layer through capital markets through the same fiat system. Yep. And so we have this tool of Bitcoin. We have this protocol layer where we can anchor things possibly to it, so that we can then again wrap thermodynamics around other markets to encapsulate your thesis, the price of tomorrow forever deflationary, and just accelerating that path of tokenization tethered to layer one Bitcoin. And so that's kind of where I think it's at least fun to explore, because, Michael Saylor has talked about, hey, what if we just trade stocks and we don't need a Charles Schwab, right? Independent people can trade equities peer-to-peer in this digital world. We have Larry Fink talking about tokenization. We have Trump talking about tokenization. And so my theory is that not tokenization on a shitcoin, but if we were to somehow figure out a way to encapsulate our capital markets to where you, Jeff Booth, or me, GMoney, Garrett, I could start a company tomorrow without SEC approval, right? Without having 40 lawyers and $4 million to get, access to capital markets, but like where a true free market would enable anybody on the planet to create an entity and then raise money. That, to me, at least, is a different view from I think what you have in how we can. Okay,
I don't think it is, and I think the nuance here is what we're talking about. And so, do you remember like years ago when Michael Saylor was talking about try to take my Bitcoin? Right, I'm with the cyber hornets and decentralized secure. I'll move. It's my Bitcoin. It's in my seed words in my head. And he was very on side with kind of the decentralization security. And then something changed, where now it's digital capital. What does digital capital mean, right? What is and what you're saying is the natural tendency to move back into the other system. What does digital credit mean? Right, it's a derivative instrument on something that cannot allow, right, So it has to centralize. It must. I'm not. He's not. He's a good person. He's not. I think he's been good for Bitcoin and everything else. But foundationally, you've seen a change in him, in his words, into what you would expect to happen from a system of centralization. Same thing with Larry Fink and tokenization, of course, right? And again, these things will happen. People are going to get burned like crazy because all of the big money needs to try to do this, to try to attack Bitcoin. And they need to try to give you something to be able to trade your Bitcoins in self-custody to that system. So I'm not arguing that it's going to happen. I'm arguing that if a free market produces deflation and you just held Bitcoin in self-custody, if that's all you did and didn't get flushed out, then what you should expect to see is the first free market that's ever existed, and prices over time falling and falling and falling. What would be some of the consequences of that? The capital markets would get way less. They would be, because right now, it's funny, if you ask what an asset is or why an asset, the very reason the word asset is because you can't store your money in money. Ever thought about that? And so the tokenization of the entire, because you're having to make all these bets with somebody else telling you what to do to drive massive money into a financialization of the world, because you're not smart enough to do it, because your asset or your house or your stocks and everything else, because if you don't, my money is going to lose money faster. So the entire market is moving into it, and it's literally because you've never been able to store your money in money. Now you can store your money in money, and you don't need all of those things.
I guess I just look at it like I would rather have a world to where anybody could start a company and have access to capital markets if they had a really good idea, versus only a small group of people having access to the capital markets. And so, Bitcoin being this open, right, world system, if people were able to create its own token, like, Ego Death Capital, right? You guys have your own company. If you were able to just create it outside of that system, so nobody could short sell your stock, because look, I think some of the Bitcoin treasury companies are under immense pressure from the theft and the practice of naked short selling. We don't have productive capital markets that are anything of what is actually reality, right? They have there's certain hours of the day, there's market maker, there's all these third layers inside of these capital markets that makes our capital markets not efficient at all. That is part of the problem why we don't live in a free market system.
Totally agree. And here's the thing. What we've just described and everything you're describing, people will cheat. People cheat gold, people cheat the stocks. If you give them a way to cheat, they will cheat. Well, if you give them a way to tokenize this, they will cheat. Some entrepreneurs will cheat, some capital markets. You can guarantee from human nature, people will cheat. Bitcoin imposes the truth. It imposes a layer. Will people try to cheat it? Of course they will. Lots of people are going to go broke. If you say what Ego Death it does, you want how hard it is to compete in a truly free market outside of this. Your value is you have to deliver value to somebody else, and they have to choose it. And if you do that, you start growing really fast. And we're seeing this in a lot of the different companies because they're providing, in the case, privacy on top of Bitcoin as an example. So now you have Bitcoin, and now you have complete privacy if you're on top of it. So we have certain companies that are starting to experience this and now working super hard against all of this nonsense to be able to deliver value that people don't know they need until they need it, right? And now these companies start growing. As soon as they start growing, the margin that they create comes under attack from every other Bitcoin company wanting to copy. Right. So prices fall faster and faster. So when you say, and I've always lived in what even before Bitcoin or anything else, I'm an entrepreneur. How do you raise, when you say open capital markets, an entrepreneur raises typically money from friends and family, because no one will believe them, right?
Yeah.
Until they're friends and family. And they have to prove that they did this with very little capital. They can't access debt. They can't. So when you're talking about what do capital markets look like, you're actually inside that system talking about how broken and how distorted it is. And these outrageous valuations that people, Elon Musk, what he just did, right? To launch SpaceX into a term that all of the indexes had to pull it on, so it didn't fall right away. The manipulation is so outrageous in that market. So you're talking capital markets at that scale. Any entrepreneur anywhere can raise capital if their idea is good enough. Anywhere, right now.
Yeah.
They have to convince one person that their idea, and it's not debt. It's, I have a belief in this future version that when I deliver this future version of reality against all of this challenge, that then people will use it. And then when people use it, then they can convince more people that their version of reality is right. That's how the free market works, and it always has worked. So the capital markets are so distorted today, and because people cheat, they will be more distorted, and you're looking through that lens when you're saying what the free market looks like.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, my hope is that Bitcoin can help fix other systems that are functional to some degree. Like, we want a free, healthy, open, transparent capital markets. We don't want to have, shysters be able to shut down companies because there's a lot of money to be gained, but their technology is good, right? And that's happened over the years for a very long time. And so I guess I would prefer a world to where, yeah, you're going to have scammers, but you're going to have an open market. Like, that's the essence of a free open market, is that you're going to have cheaters and liars and thieves as part of that. But the overall access of having a free open market trumps the liars, the cheaters, and the shysters out there.
So there's a really good point, and that's why we're so early here, and why the kind of energy, most of the energy would be in the other system, trying to solve it from that, trying to drive more money, and most of the cheaters, liars, and everything else would be in the other system, trying to protect their gains that come from theft, right? And it would feed. Now you have this other system. Look at Bitcoin mining as an example in this other system. I'm on the board of Core Scientific, which was one of the largest Bitcoin miners. I joined the board after it went bankrupt. Why did it go bankrupt, and why will most large Bitcoin miners go bankrupt? Because they invest in energy, high cost, and in Bitcoin mining, you're buying new equipment all the time, which is better than the old equipment, and you need lower cost energy. So now I had a big mining, and I won the last 4-year cycle because I had energy at 6 cents and I had old equipment. But I have to refresh all my equipment, so I have this massive capital cost burden, because otherwise I'm going to lose money. And then and energy chases all around the lowest energy cost. So it chases all around the world, and now it's 3 cent energy, and I'm at 6 cents, and I'm getting liquidated. Every dollar I put in, I lose more money, and I have a capital cost to build the new. So Bitcoin mining, by that nature, can't centralize. But then you have a whole bunch of people out there that we need more fees in Bitcoin mining, and Bitcoin mining reinforcing we need more fees because they need more fees to keep them being liquidated. But it's a harsh market and it's competitive. So you can't create a monopoly in a free market, because the market constantly moves. But look at all the monopolies in finance, regulation, and so regulation in healthcare, and every single thing has 3 or 4 monopolies at the top, and that's a function of a distorted market. And those people are heavily in favor of regulation to block out competition. What you just described, and this is in finance, you said the banking system's getting better with Bitcoin. No, it isn't. It's trying to stop Bitcoin because they mint money by printing money, by putting you into debt forever, while they just can print more money forever, right? It is not getting better. It's trying to stop Bitcoin. These systems are incompatible.
Okay. Yeah. Well, to me, it's like they're going to have to adapt to this new system or they will die, that death. But anyways, let's get into kind of the future stuff here because I love talking about this stuff. Your book, The Price of Tomorrow, is about this new deflationary, amazing world of AI and robots and all this crazy stuff. And so, in the future, it talks, Elon talks consistently about, I don't think dollars will be used as currency, just mass and energy. He says it again, things will be measured in dollars, just mass and energy. And then, we get to like Kardashev level 2, and so all these things, like what is money, because I believe Bitcoin is this 1,000-year system. And if in the future, we don't even look at money as money, we just look at it as energy and watts, then I'm just curious, like what does that look like in the future in your perspective?
It's
like, are we still going to have are we going to have like techno kings and like, lower serfs again, or what's that look like?
So it depends on which system you're measuring from, but this is why, like, nothing he just put there is any different than I've said. It's what I've said for 7 years, right? Bitcoin is a decentralized secure protocol that is pricing falling prices that should fall faster and faster and faster over time. Now, I'm not saying in any month or year, but over time, right? And it's not in any month or year because people want to cheat Bitcoin and everything else, and they're still in the other system. And so this produces these massive back and forth, right? And hype cycles on both. Everybody sells their Bitcoin, moves to AI to try to make more money. And then the insiders of the AI boom are going to buy Bitcoin. And so and when I say stupid, that maybe that's wrong word. It's just inside, they're so programmed inside their old belief system that they're staying there. So this is going to play out for a long, long time because it's us changing that is the thing. I used to be in that other system. It was me changing that freed me. So what Elon's saying is, what is money? If money to you, and you've never asked the question, what is money? If money for you is a dead instrument that somebody else can print forever, then you're playing on somebody else's rule book and you have no choice. And every single function of inside that rule book is still on that on that game board. And all the derivatives of that game board, you said techno kings. Of course there'll be techno kings and serfs because you're playing on the techno kings rule book on what is money. And if money is a debt instrument and productivity is supposed to flow faster in a free market, you're not in a free market. You're in the opposite market, being controlled by the techno lords. Right? You're inside that. And those techno lords are getting in cahoots with the government to be able to make sure that you're controlled. Of course, right? That's what it looks like. But the other thing that he just said is if it's watts, energy, if it stays decentralized and secure and the techno lords can't stop Bitcoin, then if you're in Bitcoin, you're the beneficiary of all the productivity forever.
Yeah, it goes to infinite game versus zero-sum game. And it's hard for people to even, fathom, the infinite game because the infinite game just seemed like this utopian socialism, and a lot of the people on the right think that's what it is.
So it's so funny that you say that, and again, because the people on the right think that, and the people on the left think they're so married to their version, which they've never questioned. What is the free market? Both. Could this new version be that they've never seen produce a better outcome? My first page of Price of Tomorrow 7 years ago is, I don't believe in dystopia. I don't believe in utopia. I believe in human action. In human action, we solve problems, and the problem that we solve exists the opportunity to solve them. We will always have problems. In a free market, we'll solve them faster because the problems exist. In fact, even what we're talking about, you could go different layers. Bitcoin exists, and what's happening right now and exists in a perfect space and time as a reflexive action against the dystopian 1984 digital panopticon and the technocrats' dream of serfs and we're at the control system. Bitcoin exists to be able to counterforce to that. What's happening right now on top of Bitcoin, on all the privacy preserving tech and everything else, is it also has to be private to protect against this, because the overwhelming force, and most people giving their energy to the overwhelming force, unbeknownst energy to the overwhelming force, means it has to have these things. But those things would be really valuable in a free market because they produce safety for those people.
Yeah. Interesting conversation. Okay, I mean, we got to talk about it, right? Like, we're less than a month away from the BIP 110 activation. You've previously said you are running knots, but you haven't signaled for BIP 110. Have you changed your thesis on that? Are you going to signal? Where are you kind of at in this whole thing?
Yeah. So I'm purposely not saying one side or another, whether and what I'm doing there. I feel the nuance here is so polarizing.
It is.
That I want people to make their own decision. So what I'm trying to do is point out both the pros and cons of both decision and what this might look like. So on one side of this, if I said what I would expect a core to look like under something that had, remember, Epstein, everything on, nobody's in jail, right? The entire financial, and you couldn't break Bitcoin. What I would expect is if you had a group of people, I would expect you to befriend those group of people and slowly change Bitcoin, right? And I would expect the mass majority of people measuring through fiat lens to be for that. And so that's just what I would expect. People could expect different things, and I'm not saying good or bad people here, but that's what I would expect to see. If it looked like that, and Bitcoin became that was the attack vector, that you could slowly move people, and they didn't see the second order or third order consequence of slowly moving, I would expect to see that. I would also expect to see a reflexive action by people who dug deeper and were violent against that, right? And through that, I would expect that this group of people, let's say one group of people, those Bitcoiners are harsh. They're harsh. We'll befriend you more. Here's what we'll do, and that's where the funding mechanism comes from too. And if Luke Dasher was kind of that 10th man and constantly fighting for, no, this is going to create a problem later on, we need to do it this way, you would make his voice smaller. Now let's argue the other side. From the smaller voice, you could expect some of those people to hate these people so much that they started acting potentially what would look like to the overall group unreasonable. And then and through that unreasonable, then you'd do on both sides ad hominem attacks on both sides, and attack this person on different sides for different reasons altogether than the core and underlying. And most people would get caught in that. Now, what about knots on what about if you transfer to only a couple maintainers? Does it create a different risk, right? And so all of these things and the nuance in these conversations is so great and so wide that most people won't even have the nuanced conversation. So I like people on both sides. I really like people on both sides. I try to check my own biases all the time because I know the type of environment we're in. I know the type of social engineering that is happening on us through what we're clicking on, and we're being socially engineered. And I try to pull myself out of the social engineering and ask, okay, what should this look like? What would it look like if there was a social engineering? And that we thought we were making free decisions that we might not be. Because Because when you look at somebody else's belief system and say, how could they believe that so strongly? Then you have to turn the mirror around to yourself and say, wouldn't it be the same for you? So anytime I'm kind of taking a side on and that's why I actually haven't here specifically. I've told everybody I run knots, but I haven't. Whether I signal for it or not is my own decision, right?
Yeah.
It is because I want people to do their own work on why these things exist, and then their own choice. I believe Bitcoin's money. I believe it's going to come under many threats, and ultimately the people that are treating it as money and actively engaging in these threats are actually the immune response for the centralization of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I guess I take a little bit of different perspective, and I don't think I know enough to have a decision that this 1,000-year-old technology that's going to outlast us is going to be just for money, right? Like it's a very humbling position. It was like, I don't know if it's just money because I don't know what the next 100 years is going to be like. And I truly believe that we only have one true immutable ledger of the time chain for humanity. And whether people are storing, digital frogs or cures to COVID or cures to free energy, an immutable ledger, right, is something that should be prioritized, protected. And I guess the only other thing, that I would say is that I think it's a very much more sinister attack with the fact that it only needs a 55% activation. And so I think that is where we really get into as long as it remains decentralized and secure, because what that is really doing is that's an attack at the consensus level, right? Because we're under the rules that it's very, very hard to change Bitcoin, 90% and above. And when you change something that important in this technology, making it, we just need a simple majority, that brings us back to our old world of politics and, hey, we just need a simple majority. And the next woke mob can come through and decide, hey, we can just vote on this thing and override it. And so I guess that's my biggest pet peeve in how this was done is that, first of all, I don't know what Bitcoin is. It is money. It's the greatest money ever, but I also think it's the greatest historical ledger ever created. I think it's all these other different things, including bit power, which enables human sovereignty. But I also think that the consensus mechanism of Bitcoin is the most important part because we as humans has always lived in this world of simple majority rules. And I think that's really kind of my issue with it is that, wow, man, this is really going to change this, consensus proof protocol into just kind of the majority rules type thing. So anyways.
Yeah. If you just went from, okay, so think about your belief in Bitcoin right now. So these are just layers, right? Think about your belief in Bitcoin versus the majority of the world. You're an outlier, right? A massive outlier. And you're either right in it being a massive outlier, and it feels crazy, like you're in a tiny minority, and you totally believe you're right in what the future looks like. And for sure everybody else is still operating in a system that's manipulating them. And it's creating a conflict. So 99% of this world's still over here and you're over here. And what does that say is it's the same thing that happens in the free market. What happens in the free market is the minority is often right. The majority can't see because they're operating in the different rule sets. So now to apply that's at one layer, apply it here. And you might start questioning some of your own biases. You might not, right? You might choose. And what Bitcoin is, it should be for you to decide what it is for you. So I'm not going to try to get you to choose what it is for me, but I think it's important for both of us and all people to, what does it look like for you? And where might you be wrong? No, because you already know 99% of your friends are wrong about Bitcoin, right? And you're already the minority. Wouldn't it look like this as this transit? If it stayed decentralized and secure, wouldn't it have to withstand all of those attacks by the 90% of the people over and over and over again? It would have to.
Yeah. Anyways, I know we're running low on time. We always do a Pepe of the week, though, Jeff, or Pepe of the month as it is now, because we do love our Pepe the Frogs. Again, these are layer 2 tokens on Bitcoin that we think preserve important historical artifacts. And this one we picked was time travel Pepe, because we believe, Jeff, you may be a time traveler with all your knowledge giving to the world in this new world of abundance and deflationary. But a journey is best measured in Pepes rather than miles. Certified 1 out of 10. This was created back in 2016. There's only 10 of these guys, so it's a pretty rare thing. But yeah, we like to put these little things on the frog. They're not inscriptions. They don't actually, the images don't actually rely on layer 1. But, it's an interesting protocol. Have you ever heard of Counterparty before, Jeff? Layer 2?
No, haven't.
Okay. And so what happened back in 2014, Bitcoiners basically copied the Ethereum contract, smart contract code, and stuck it on Bitcoin. But it had a very unique creation. And that's why I really kind of want to talk to you about this at the end here, because what happened with this protocol is the only way this token was created was through the burning of Bitcoin. So there was no ICO, there was no president. Like, the only way you got access to this token, XCP, was if you sent Bitcoin to a provably unspendable Bitcoin address, right? You will return. And so there was a burn period of like 3 months. I think there was like 2 million coins created, but these coins, like, you can still see the Bitcoin address there there's over 2,000 Bitcoin sitting in this address that essentially are holding the thermodynamics of this token in the protocol of Bitcoin. And that's what I think is unique about all these other, the Citrias and all these other bullshit kind of tokens that are out there. There's only one token that actually follows the thermodynamics of Bitcoin, because if you think about like burned Bitcoins, well, they're not really burned, right? Because they're sitting in a Bitcoin provably unspendable address. So real miners spent the energy to create those Bitcoins that are now sitting in an address that can never be spent. And so anyways, I mapping thermodynamics around all these different markets. And that's why, we think maybe this could be one potential solution to offer capital markets to be wrapped in. So anyways, that's how we like to think about things. But any thoughts on that?
Not deep enough onto it. Okay. I just, I think what's going to happen is so if you go back to the mining that I said and what the free market looks like in mining, free market looks like in mining means you don't need fees in mining. The block size reward is enough, and things will move to where they're best served. So things, in fact, why the fee pressure isn't on Bitcoin right now? You could actually make this block smaller, because because the fees, because people are moving to Lightning and Fediment and other thing, Cashew and other things that are moving. I think it would be normal to want to do everything on the base chain, right? Instead of seeing it as a protocol, just like it would be if you said the internet evolution from TCP/IP and delivering more and more value through layers. At first, it would seem normal on two sides, on TCP/IP. I can't do this thing for it. I need it to change to do this thing, right? And so that's what I think a lot of the fights in Bitcoin have been about, right? I need this to do more here. Where naturally that happens because of the scarcity, and the scarcity is solved through layering different technology, different protocol additions on top of that move the problem to a different area and are better solved at a different area. So that's how the internet works. That's how this is going to work. That we're just early in that evolution of that happening.
Yeah. Any updates with Fedi BTC or what your travel plans are? Any upcoming conferences you're going to be at to let people know about?
Not anything for the next couple months. What do I have next year? I'm going to go to New Zealand, that conference. So there's a new one in Miami that's going to be in February that I'm going to attend, called Sovereign. Both are actually called Sovereign conferences. They're going to expand not just Bitcoin, but what it takes for true sovereignty.
Awesome. And Fedi BTC, what's kind of the update? I've kind of been following it, but it looks like you guys released some code recently, or
so Fediment is really starting to gain traction. I think they went from 8 federations to 80 federations in the last 6 months, and I think they expect to do many more federations in the upcoming. What ended up happening on it is that I use it as my principal communications channel now and money spending, and it is because you can't, once the guardians are set up, like I don't need to know who the guardians are. They're completely protected, and that means there's no way to attack me or my money or my. There literally, you can't get through the that system. There is no centralizing function, and you can't find the guardians. So people could go up and set up their own federation right now, kind of on a 3 of 5 or 5 of 7 thing, and actually protect them, their family, everything else from what's happening, because the money's completely private. You can imagine with things what you're seeing in Europe, and even on you see lightning transactions needing KYC, right? Which we have already talked about in a different. You'd expect these things to happen, right? You'd expect these things as the travel rules and different governments try to stop Bitcoin. You'd expect this to happen. So the counter to that cannot be stopped is really important technology in that's emerging. So it's not there yet. It's been that's protocol tech. It's really hard to develop. That's why it's taken a long time. But it's now again, I'm using it as my primary wallet and primary communication device right now, because there's nothing else that I can truly trust, because everything else is centralized in some sort of fashion.
Yeah. So is there any way people can join a federation right now, or we're still kind of maybe waiting for that?
No, they can go. They can join. If they just go download Fedi, they can join other federations. One thing, if you're joining a different federation, you're trusting that federation has been set up underneath it with guardians that are trustworthy and everything else. You can do that, and but I wouldn't join somebody else's federation and put a whole bunch of money in it, because you would. Or you could set up your own, right? And if you set if you set up your own, you know that that it's completely protect one Bitcoin in. It's all eCash on top of that, and it's always going to be one Bitcoin fully reserved if those people can't come under attack. Why this was so hard tech to be able to deliver is you, as one of the guardians, if you understand how the centralized system works, is if you were known as one of the guardians, you'd be a money transmitter. So you had to develop and then nobody would want to be guardians, right? Because you'd be a money transmitter, and you'd have a flag on you to go after. And so this had to be set up that people could set it up anywhere in the world, all over the world, and they couldn't be found as money transmitters. It is impossible to find them. And so what you're now essentially enabling is private banking everywhere that is completely outside of the reach of governments and such, which is also why it's exploding right now.
Well, that's amazing. We definitely appreciate that. We know what happened with the Samurai devs. They're still in prison right now as we speak, and so. We're thankful for Privacy Solutions. We appreciate you. You're a patriot, sir. We appreciate all the things you've done for Bitcoin. And so thanks for coming on, Rugpull, again. We do appreciate you. And I guess we'll catch you we'll catch you next time.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Jeff. Appreciate you. Get rid of that. And all right. Hope you guys enjoyed that session with Jeff Booth. Just an incredible dude, and so yeah, we'll keep an eye on Fedi and his progress with that. So again, anything adding to keeping Bitcoin private is super helpful for all of us. So anyways, let's get into the circus news of the week. This guy puts out a pretty good post. The most bearish thing about Bitcoin right now is not the price, spam, or treasury companies. It's the fact that transaction fees are at a 10-year low and have been sub 1 sat per VByte for more than a year. Where are the on-chain users? Where's the activity? Where's the demand for valuable block space? Screw 1 sat VBeats. I want to see 100 sat for bytes. Make block space valuable again. Yeah, what's going on? That's true. No one's using it. And this is why, like, the Patriots have to force this acceleration. If they do not force the acceleration, it will die, right? It's kind of funny because, I previously said that, Bitcoin doesn't need governments. And this plan probably would have failed had not Trump been in office pushing for crypto clarity bill and all this other stuff. Like, let's be honest. So, again, why Saylor has to gobble up all the Bitcoin, right? He's got to push the needle. He's got to push everybody into game theory, because game theory only works if you accelerate the adoption. Otherwise, it just stalls out. So, the famous tweet of Trump: "I am not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies which are not money and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior." Who would have predicted Trump morphing into a Bitcoin maxi after this post 7 years ago? Oh, right. I did. Happy 7-Eleven. Happy 7-Eleven, folks. It was a couple days ago, but we do love our 7s and 11s, folks, don't we? We love the numbers, don't we? And funny enough, I didn't realize this, but the day I met Don Jr. at the Trump Hotel in DC was the same day Trump put out that tweet. I've never met any of the Trumps before, like, ever in my entire life, except that one time I met Don Jr. checking into the Trump Hotel when I was there in 2019. It was on July 11th. And I just thought that was a weird quirk of fate that on 7-Eleven, the same day Trump put out the Bitcoin tweet, I ran into Don Jr. with my Q hat on, by the way. The Q hat was on, if you guys didn't see that. I think I did ask him about Q or something, and I don't know. I forget the conversation actually, but I didn't get a long chance to talk to him. Secret Service was everywhere. I met him when he was walking in through the lobby. I waited for him for a couple minutes because when I was checking in, I overheard the guy say, "Yeah, I have Don Jr.'s room ready for him." And I was like, "Did you just say Don Jr.?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm not supposed to say anything, but yeah." And so I went to the front, and sure, all the Secret Service was there, and he was still with Kimberly Guilfoyle, I think, at the time. Or is that right? Yeah, whatever her name was. Not Gil. What was her name? Anyways. What else we got? We got Eric Trump with his shitcoin tweet, where Ethereum, I think, dumped right after that. So not this shit again. And then we had Lindsey Graham probably get blown up by a Russian missile, which is kind of ironic and kind of funny. So Graham inspected a drone factory in Ukraine yesterday. Russia blew up that facility today. Then tonight it is announced that Graham is dead from a sudden illness. No more details. I say there's a decent chance that Russia blew up Lindsey Graham. Thank you, Putin. Thank you, Russia, for blowing up that genocidal maniac who nobody liked. And somehow he was still an American politician. Go figure that one out. This is a cool chart, guys. This is consensus.health. So go to consensus.health, go log in with your X profile, and you can either support or, oppose BIP 110. And it'll put your little moniker here with your followers. I'm up here at the top on, what consensus looks like. So interestingly enough, this was also 9 years ago. So the buy Bitcoin with, of course, Treasury Secretary Yellen, of course, right there. And so, what else we got? We got the strange signal, some Kofefe hits, and we had, of course, Saylor put out the right to bear arms, and he's battling bears with a shield and a sword. And of course, we know Bitcoin is a weapon system. This is definitely a soft war vibe. You catch the drift. He's literally battling with the sword and shield, guys. Like, no, it's just about Michael Saylor battling the bears, G. They got nothing to do with soft war. Okay. And then, of course, Saylor finally comes in huge on the BIP 110 stuff. So he says, there are 110 things more dangerous to Bitcoin than spam. BIP 110 turns a spam dispute into a consensus change that would invalidate some currently valid fee-paying transactions. That precedent is the danger. We should save our energy for threats that really matter. So first of all, he's got 110 and BIP 110. So if you know the 1111, hint, hint, he was able to get the 1111 in there. And then conveniently talks about the spam dispute as the consensus, but he says a consensus change. That's what he's really diving into the heart of this. This is not about spam. This is a consensus change, guys, like what I talked about earlier, right? And so if you understand that the essential element that makes Bitcoin is the high level of consensus needed, you realize this is a consensus attack, okay? Turns a spam dispute into a consensus change. Spam dispute, consensus change. Does that make any sense? Of course not. They're using your emotions, your appeal to authority, the mob mentality to change, right? How you vote. Does that sound familiar for anything else in this world? It's kind of easy to call out once you see it. And so, yeah, lots of rug pulls out there, guys. And we're going to lose some Bitcoiners to this. I hate to break it to you. We're going to lose some cool Bitcoiners, you know, but it just exposed the pinko commie Marxists that would rather try to persuade you with emotion rather than actual common sense and critical thinking. And so here's a good post from Cali BTC. BIP 110 is a case study for the current state of the world. Truth doesn't matter. The mob will attach to low high Q influencers and don't care about scientific accuracy. White pill. Bitcoin isn't a democracy. We don't care about how many influencers you get on your side. The mob can't do shit. You can't vote us out. You either run our software or you create something that isn't great. Rationality and the spirit of cooperation prevail. Stay strong, devs. We're counting on you. Yeah. And then, of course, we had, Surfer Jim, who I talk about historic publishing on chain. He laughs at it and he says, of cartoon frogs. And you think somehow people will care. Well, one day some people might care about those cartoon frogs. I don't know, Jim, something about those cartoon frogs. But the biggest rug pull here is that to realize the leader of this consensus change is a pedophile that eats cats. Okay, Luke Dash Jr. ran a subreddit for pedo victims and does not believe the largest of all pedo rings, the Catholic Church, has any pedophiles. Can't make this shit up. Luke is a pedo. Isn't it weird that a guy who thinks children as young as 12 are adults and that he ran a subreddit for pedo victims? What shouldn't the FBI or like law enforcement be doing? Why is this weirdo running a program for pedo victims? That sounds really freaking weird. Really freaking weird. It just gets weirder and weirder as you actually look into this. And so I hate to break it to you, but there's no other way to put it that like Luke is a pedo at this point. There's no other way to put it, guys. It's pretty disgusting. And it's pretty disgusting that they're actually projecting, the pedophiles are projecting the consensus change, trying to save them, right? If they change the way Bitcoin works at the consensus level, they have effectively broke Bitcoin. I'm sorry to put it. This attack is a lot worse than I thought it was. And so, yeah, they changed the consensus change. This is a real problem, guys, a real problem. But again, why this had to be ran by the military. Again, why the guardrails had to be put in place to allow some exploitation of creativeness, but not throw us off track that we're going to degen into simple majority rules. Okay, that's the beauty about this. And that's why they're so triggered by this, because they know a lot of the hash is ran by centralized pools to a degree, and they realize some of it is actually governmental. And so if you realize that the guardrails are there for a reason, quote unquote, to make sure we don't fuck this up, okay, because we are so close, then you'd realize we needed some kind of centrally command and controlled operation. Get too far off the rails and go into some wild, crazy, mob rule consensus fork. And so anyways, pretty interesting, actually, when you look at the battle space. This is a very well put together attack. probably by the Fabians themselves. Let's be honest. And so at the end of the day, you guys, Bitcoin is not a democracy. Fucking vote harder. Anyways, guys, yeah, I'm traveling in Europe at the moment, and I'll be back in August. So Shadalay, keep on trucking, keep stacking those sats, stay humble, right? Actually, stay toxic, man. Enough of this staying humble shit. The gloves are off for some of these guys. Like, actually, I'm going to play a quick The Mad Cratter. Want to hear a guy crash out? Have a listen to this.
So I want to end with a warning to mining pools. We plebs are basically insane people. You should realize after having seen the last 6 months, we're insanely committed to getting this activated. We're not going to let up until BIP 110 gets activated. We're never going away until we get what we want. We are going to be a thorn in your side for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, if that's what it takes. And we're going to make your lives and continue to make your lives absolutely miserable if you oppose us. And it's because you mining pools need to remember you work for us, the plebs, and not the other way around. And here's the other thing. We have a remarkably high threshold for pain as hodling plebs that I can promise you that your exchange or mining pool or other Bitcoin or crypto business does not have this similar high threshold for pain. We don't care if the price tanks to $15,000. We don't care if it tanks to $5,000 or $1,000. We can out-hodl all of you because we have our Bitcoin in self-custody. We also don't care if the chain split, if there is a chain split, and if there is one, if it wreaks havoc on your exchange. We don't care if your mining pool goes bankrupt because we keep throwing out your blocks. BIP 110 is being run by the most maniacal Bitcoin plebs that have ever existed, and we're armed with our personal servers, our Star 9s, and our Umbrals. We're hashing, we're mining, and we really are taking back the network. So I would say, because this is being run by the most maniacal Bitcoin plebs that have ever existed, and we're not going to take no for an answer, I would suggest that the Bitcoin mining pools think about this, realize this is a very simple, non-contentious upgrade, and they just start to signal for it. So I would suggest to the large mining pools, choose wisely, have a nice day, and make the right choice, because otherwise your lives are going to be absolutely miserable. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons, hit the notification.
Otherwise, your lives are going to be absolutely miserable. Who does this guy sound like? Talk about a pinko commie Marxist. The ends justify the means. Crash out. That is a total crash out. So we're going to lose some of these guys. They're going to be BSVers, right? They're going to go the Craig Wright way or the Roger Ver way, right? Where they just so wholeheartedly believe that they're right, that they can't digest the humbleness of this great operation, right? They just can't digest it. And that's why you have to remain tempered in your discernment. And if you're wrong about something, you have to make sure you're able to, like, in your head, be realizing that you're wrong. I've been wrong many times. And the only reason I've survived this long is because I've adapted every time. I've gone, I know this is why. You were wrong there. This is why. And that's why we got to keep moving forward. And so be adaptable, okay? Because your impression or your thoughts about Bitcoin, that's why I try to keep as open mind as I can about it and treat this as a tool of sovereignty that nobody can control the rules of. And so, anyways, kind of a weird crash out. But he definitely crashed out pretty freaking hard. So, anyways, Shadalay, and watch out for the rugs. Oh, one more thing here. Tone Vase makes a really good point. Okay, back to the rug pulls here. Right, the BIP 110s are going to get pretty hard. So here's what's going to happen. Oh, by the way, none of you, when this fork happens, okay, do not go download some BIP 110 if they fork off. Okay, that is where your seed phrase will be compromised, and they will go steal your real Bitcoin. So wait until major wallet manufacturers adopt it. If they do, when they fork off, they probably will fork off. You'll probably get airdropped the coin in your stash. So hold off for a while. Don't do anything right away. I will give people updated information if that does happen. And I did it when the Bcash fork happened. I got airdropped their tokens. They actually came into my Coinbase account, so I dumped them right away through Coinbase back in the day. But cold storage is a different thing, and so make sure you do not rush to download a wallet to try and sell those coins or move them because they will compromise your original wallet. That's what they're trying to do. So be careful there. But this is probably what will happen. And Tonebase kind of nails it. Going into Flag Day, more miners will start signaling the fork in order to give false hope for the Nazis. Fork takes place with close to 3% of the network signaling because it costs nothing to signal. The day of the fork, about 1.5% hash rate will actually be mining future Luke coin. This low hash rate will force Luke to implement an emergency difficulty adjustment so that blocks can be mined approximately every 30 to 60 minutes, right? Otherwise, it'd be like 30 hours, I think, for a block because of the high hash rate. They will also need to add replay protection, just like BCH, to lock down every 6th block or so. Within 48 hours of Flag Day, there will be another token, Luke coin, Maxi coin, anti-spam coin, etc. And so, the reason I will believe this will spin off into a shitcoin is not because all the leaders of the movement will be canceled or not welcomed within the Bitcoin community going forward. Every conference that claims to be a Bitcoin conference will likely not allow them as speakers if the conference wants to be taken seriously. They will also lose all relevance and influence going forward. Therefore, the only way they can stay relevant and enjoy the fame they built over the last few years is inside their own little bubble of spinning off into a shitcoin. They certainly are not the first, and they won't be the last. I, for one, won't miss a single one of them. I won't either. Have fun. Fork around and find out. Anyways, Shade Late, we'll catch you next month. Bye.
You get back to this conversation that we had before, which is if they've got nukes and you don't, then the only response, the only rational response, like you have no choice. You must master this technology. You have to adopt it as quickly as possible. If the world is adopting a physical power projection technology for cyberspace, a new base layer physically secure internet, and the only way to attack people through it is by collateralizing their bits, i.e. by using Bitcoin, then you must adopt this technology. This is not a conversation. This is not a negotiation. It is adapt or die, cooperate or die. The Department of Treasury is not qualified to be talking about this. The Federal Reserve Bank is not qualified to be talking about this. If we just throw away this coin part, all these other people masquerading as experts in proof of work technology look ridiculous, and at the same time you prove that the ESG narrative about this being inefficient is also equally ridiculous. So maneuver warfare, take the fight you can win. If you want to defeat the Department of Treasury, all these ESG fudsters, all these shitcoiners, and the Federal Reserve, take them on head on, and while simultaneously say that we have no choice but to adopt this. I don't care what you have to say, we have to adopt it. Then frame it as I just framed it.
Delay, my friends.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.